Hello and welcome. My name is Bill Hart, the Executive Director of the Missouri Alliance for Historic Preservation. For over 40 years, Missouri Preservation has recognized excellence in the field of historic preservation through our statewide Preservation Honor Awards. There are 4 categories of awards, including our Preserve Missouri Award for individual projects exemplifying best practices in historic preservation, our McReynolds Award for ongoing projects or projects that have created synergy in the area of historic preservation, our Osmond Overby Award, named after our founder, for a published work highlighting the architectural history of Missouri, and our Lifetime Achievement Award, the Rozier Award. This year presented special challenges for our celebration. The presentation's usually held in the Capitol Rotunda in the state capitol in Jefferson City. So this year, during the pandemic, we came to you. We photographed the individual award presentations and then videotaped the acceptance speeches. Our administrator, Riley Price, has devised a delightful presentation for tonight's honor awards, and I welcome you to sit back and enjoy, and a special thanks and congratulations to all of our awardees. Thank you.
The eye-catching turreted building at 3600 Texas Avenue, formerly Clara Street, was built between 1876 and 1884 and for more than half a century housed the Lewis Lang Publishing Company. The Lang Publishing Company was known for printing German family magazines such as Die Abendschule and the Illustrated Home Journal. Lang eventually went on to help found the Concordia Publishing House, which is still in business today. When Blackline Investments LLC, an affiliate of Blackline Design Plus Construction, purchased the building in 2016, it had stood vacant for decades. Most of the interior was gutted and portions had collapsed. Many of the first floor windows had been bricked in and the entire structure had been painted red. The building had to be stabilized and the exterior masonry restored. The finished product includes 15 residential units that surround an open-air courtyard, which was once used as a delivery area for carriages. Original windows were restored and historically appropriate replacement windows installed where necessary. Few historic interior finishes remained intact, but an arts and crafts style fireplace in the corner unit was kept and restored. With the assistance of the Missouri and Federal Historic Tax Credit, Blackline Investments LLC was not only able to restore this contributing structure in the Gravois-Jefferson Streetcar Suburb Historic District, but also encourage further development in this historic community.
We'd like to thank Missouri Preservation for the honor and thank them for their recognition. The building is the Lewis Lang Publishing Company, built in the late 1800s for what is now become Concordia Publishing. The building was severely dilapidated and partially collapsed, and we're excited to bring it back to life. We need to thank our lender, People's National Bank. We need to give a big thanks to Alderwoman Kara Spencer for her support of the project, and most importantly, Missouri Department of Economic Development and the State Historic Preservation Office for awarding us historic tax credits, without which this project certainly would not have been possible.
In the 1880s, Jacob Rieger founded the J. Rieger & Company Distillery in Kansas City's West Bottoms area. At the same time, across town in the industrial East Bottoms, Ferdinand Heim established the Heim Brewery Company. The Ferdinand Heim Brewing Company bottling plant, designed by prominent Kansas City architect Charles A. Smith, was completed in 1901. Heim's company, along with that of Jacob Rieger, ceased operations during Prohibition. 90 years later, Rieger's great-great-great-grandson, Andy Rieger, set out to reinvent the family distillery. After 4 years of operations in an adjacent warehouse, J. Rieger & Co. purchased and restored the 63,000 square foot Heim property to expand and meet the growing demand for their product. The brick and stonework of the exterior was cleaned and repointed. New windows designed to match historic window profiles were installed, along with lighting to highlight the rhythm and symmetry of the architecture. On the interior, the building's original two-story atrium concept was restored to house the distillery's working production floor. The existing historic staircases, metal railings, columns, and hardwood floors were cleaned, repaired, and refinished. As a working distillery, event space, and vibrant KC destination, J. Rieger & Co. ensure that this unique aspect of Kansas City's history will not be forgotten.
Hi, I'm Andy Rieger, the president of J. Rieger & Co. We're one of the winners this year for the Missouri Preservation Awards, and unfortunately 2020 has been a year in which not a lot of people get to come enjoy what we have done, but it's 2021 and 2022 and beyond, and we're really looking forward to people being able to truly see what we've been able to build here in the Electric Park neighborhood of Kansas City. We took our distillery, which was 15,000 square feet. We purchased the neighboring 120-year-old historic Heim Brewery bottling plant building, and we did a master plan renovation where we built 2 indoor bars, tasting room, 3,500 square foot historic exhibit, theater, 30,000 square feet of total production space, tasting room, and we're about to build a 12,000 square foot park bar to the east of our property that is within our property bounds as well. Everything has a historic flair, just like our company, J. Rieger & Co., which was founded back in 1887 and died with Prohibition. All that said, it's a wonderful building, it's a wonderful project. Thank you very much to Missouri Historic Preservation for recognizing us in 2020. Cheers.
In 1925, the Woodward and Tiernan Printing Company, largest of 350 printing firms in St. Louis at the time, moved from their downtown location to a new headquarters at the corner of Tower Grove and Vandevenner Avenues in St. Louis. This massive building, while slightly smaller than originally projected, contained over 200,000 square feet of factory space on the first and second floors, including direct rail access via a spur line on the west side, and additional office and production space on the third floor. The Daylight Factory style design, from which the building now gains its significance, allowed Woodward and Tiernan to streamline and integrate their various functions under one roof with a large open floor plan and huge windows which provided abundant natural light. Peer Property Group's project, which utilized both state and federal historic tax credits, had to keep the significance of the Daylight Factory design in mind when they began rehabilitating this massive warehouse into 164 loft-style apartments in 2017. All of the multi-light industrial-style windows had been covered, and special consideration was taken to determine the final treatment of historically appropriate aluminum replacement windows. The project also retained the historic brick headhouse and the oak-framed lead glass partitions that made up the original Woodward and Tiernan offices. Added partitions and drop ceilings that covered the clerestory over the grand staircase from the main entry were removed. The team used historic photographs to restore the front entry and replace the non-historic commercial aluminum entry system. What was originally thought to be poured concrete floor in the warehouse and printing facility was actually terrazzo covered in layers of grime. Cleaning and polishing of the salvageable areas revealed the historic finish. Since the project's completion in February of 2019, Woodward Loft's successful rehabilitation has proved to be a catalyst for development throughout the surrounding historic neighborhood.
Just want to thank Missouri Preservation for honoring Woodward Lofts today. It's really a huge honor to receive this award for a project that was really truly a collaboration and involved a lot of team work from a lot of our local partners here in St. Louis. Trivers Associates being our architect, Arco Construction, our general contractor, our lending institution, CIBC Bank as well. For understanding a complicated structure involving tax credits and being able to understand it and make this project succeed. We wouldn't have been able to pull off saving this building and renovating it without the use of both federal and state historic tax credits. So be able to pull that off and then also receive this is just a huge honor. So thank you very much.
The Buckley Hotel stands at the east edge of the Hall of Waters Commercial West Historic District in downtown Excelsior Springs. This two-story yellow brick building that started as a boarding house reflects the commercial development of downtown Excelsior Springs in the late 19th and early 20th century. The Buckley Hotel, built between 1909 and 1913, is an intact example of the boarding house property type that proliferated this district. The building was divided into 4 apartments in the early 20th century, and like many of the other buildings in the area, had fallen into disrepair. In 2018, Brent McElwee purchased the building and embarked on an ambitious project to restore the apartments and preserve this unique resource. Using state and federal historic tax credits, McElwee preserved the historic layout of the apartments while improving efficiency and flow, removed non-historic and outdated finishes and fixtures while retaining and restoring extant historic material. The project kept the beautiful tile and brick fireplaces, restored the wood trim and wood flooring throughout the units, and exposed and repaired the historic plaster on the ceilings and walls. To bring the building into compliance with local codes, McElwee raised and painted the front porch railing, added a secure and stable means of egress at the rear of the building, and overall updated the building systems to modern standards. Brent McElwee's amazing transformation of the Buckley, achieved with a relatively small budget, highlights the importance of the Historic Tax Credit Program in helping to preserve resources in small towns across Missouri.
Hi, my name is Brent McElwee, and this last year I had the privilege to restore a historical building in Excelsior Springs, my hometown. And it was one of those projects that needed a lot of work and economically did not make sense until we decided to do historical tax credits, and then the project made economical sense. Without it, it would not have happened. And it is in the downtown Excelsior Springs. We've turned it into an Airbnb, and it's been very successful so far. And the project itself has been very rewarding, and I hope to do future projects using historical tax credits, and that's it.
When Elizabeth and Luke Kane purchased the house at 205 East Main Street, historically known as the Mrs. John Isbell House, in January of 2016, they knew that the house had been empty for quite some time and had fallen into serious disrepair. The roof was leaking, the rotting soffits were falling off along with the rusty gutters, both issues causing damage to the walls, ceilings, and floors of the interior. More issues emerged in the months after closing on the house, showing not just structural damage but poor construction, including joists that did not extend to load-bearing walls. Although more work was needed than originally planned, the Kanes moved forward with the project and utilized the Missouri Historic Tax Credit to help with the additional costs. Much of the first floor plaster had to be removed to make way for structural repairs. Rotting windows were replaced with historically appropriate insulated glass wood windows. Brick infill within the large arched windows of the sunroom was removed, replaced with new windows, and the room transformed into a dining area. The second floor sleeping porch needed structural repairs, and the vinyl windows were replaced. The Kanes also added a large dormer across the rear of the home to finish the attic into a master bedroom suite. Most of the building's systems were replaced, including electrical, plumbing, heating, and air conditioning. The basement stone walls needed repairs, and a new concrete floor was poured. Walls and ceilings were repaired and repainted, and the wood floors were refinished. Original millwork trim was repaired with matching pieces, and they worked hard to retain many original pieces, including the front door, staircases and railings, bookshelves, and mantle of the living room fireplace, and even the original wood cabinetry in the bathroom. In the bedroom, the original ceiling was kept intact, including a pressed metal light fixture with 2 bare bulbs, as well as the stained glass windows on either side of the fireplace. While most of the construction work was finished in mid-2018 and the Kanes had moved in, issues with the original contractor meant final photos and the final application for the historic tax credits were not completed until June of 2019. Despite the many obstacles facing them throughout this process, we applaud the Kanes' dedication to this rehabilitation project and the tax credit that has resulted in a spectacular transformation.
Well, thank you so much, Missouri Preservation. We're honored to receive this award. We would also like to thank our preservationist, Karen Bodie Baxter, for all of her help along the way. This was a 2-year adventure for us, but we knew the minute we saw the home that it was ours forever, and we're just so happy to be here. Thank you again.
The Gotham Apartments Rehabilitation Project includes 6 apartment buildings that were historically unassociated but came under the same ownership within the past few decades. Although the buildings have remained continuously occupied, they had fallen into disrepair, like many of the neighboring properties. The 4-story U-shaped Gotham Apartments was once an elegant apartment hotel, while the 2-story Aurora Apartments was much more modest in scale and finishes, indicating its status as a home for working-class individuals and families. The 4 3-story buildings of the AG Apartments were modest units with exterior detailing that communicated associations with popular architectural trends of the time, specifically the reference to the Mission Spanish colonial revival style used throughout Kansas City in the 1920s. The buildings were renovated in an insensitive manner in the 1970s, and much of the historic fabric was removed from their interior. In 2017, Integrity Development Partners LLC, Four Corners Development, and Partnership Housing Affordable to Society Everywhere Inc. joined together to create IDP Mo LLC and purchased the 6 buildings to renovate using state and federal historic tax credits as well as low-income housing tax credits. Over the next 2 years, they systematically rehabilitated each building by updating and refreshing finishes and fixtures while retaining what historic fabric remained. Multi-light wood doors that access the porches were restored where extant and historic matches installed where needed. Historic marble panels in the vestibules and wood window trim in the units were preserved in the AG apartment buildings, the only buildings that retained such materials. Inappropriate replacement windows installed in the 1980s or 90s were replaced with historically appropriate windows that also improved energy efficiency. The successful Gotham Apartments Rehabilitation Project that transformed these 6 buildings has had a substantial impact on the streetscape of this stretch of Linwood Boulevard and proved a significant investment in an area that has long been neglected. In December 2017, Old Town Cape Inc., Cape Girardeau's Main Street Revitalization Program, was chosen via public vote from 11 communities across the U.S. to receive funds from the Partners in Preservation Grant to revitalize the historic Ivor Square area in front of Cape Girardeau's Common Pleas Courthouse. A key portion of the project was rehabilitation of the bandstand with a roof more reflective of what was originally on the structure in the early 1900s, but that also worked structurally with the existing columns. It was also outfitted with updated electrical fixtures and increased amperage to ensure the bandstand's continued use, as well as a new pendant light reminiscent of the original fixture seen in the historic photographs. The nearby fountain was cleaned using a soda blasting technique. Cracks in the base were repaired and the entire piece was painted. Wooden benches around the fountain were replaced with stone seating that wraps the fountain's base. This restoration project also included adding 2 new interpretive boards to the square. The first contextualizes all of the Civil War monuments on the grounds. The second relays to visitors the story of the Ivors family, for whom the square was renamed in 2017, and the contribution of African American soldiers during the Civil War, which has also been memorialized with the installation of a bronze statue depicting a United States colored troop soldier. Old Town Cape's revitalization of Ivor Square not only ensured that a well-loved community space would continue to be used for generations, but also helped emphasize all aspects of Cape Girardeau's history and allowed the city to educate and expand awareness of the importance of historic preservation.
Old Town Cape is honored to be awarded with the 2020 Preserve Missouri Award. Thank you, Missouri Preservation, for this great honor. The Ivor Square Revitalization Project was an exciting opportunity for Old Town Cape to take what was an already well-loved community space to the next level. Funding for the project through the Partners in Preservation Grant allowed us to physically restore the bandstand to its glory days, add enhancements to the grounds, and be able to educate the community about our local history and the importance of historic preservation. But as with any large-scale community project, we would not have been able to complete the work alone. We had the help of an incredibly hard-working and talented team. We would like to thank them and our project partners: the City of Cape Girardeau and Cape Girardeau County, Derek Stork with Stork Home Builders, our project architect, Philip B. Smith, the team at Kiefner Brothers General Contractors, Justin Kurtz with Cornerstone Facility Management, Kelly Green and Marla Mills with KLG Engineering, Cotner Electric, Sandon Engineering, and Metro Lighting. And we would also like to thank the Cape Girardeau community, because it was through winning a national voting process that we were awarded this project grant. Old Town Cape is proud to continue to serve the downtown community, and through this project help to ensure that Ivor Square will remain for all of us and for future generations of residents and visitors of downtown a welcoming community place. Thank you so much.
Designed by German architect Gustav Bachmann, the Lincoln County Courthouse has served as the seat of the county through various renovations and additions since 1870. Integral to Bachmann's original design are 6 cast iron columns that have supported the entry porch for 149 years. In anticipation of the county's sesquicentennial, several courthouse projects were considered, including the restoration of the 6 Corinthian columns. Following an on-site evaluation and paint test, numerous stages of deterioration were found, including crazing, cracking and peeling of paint, corrosion of the cast iron bases caused by trapped moisture and improper ventilation, and decades of superficial dirt and dust accumulation compounded with birds nesting on capital surfaces. Removal of the columns revealed the cast iron bases were recessed within the stone porch floor, which led to the complete deterioration of more than half of the bases caused by water entrapment. The column shafts and capitals were stripped and cleaned, and new bases were cast in a local foundry to match the originals, with minor alterations made to allow water to drain. This process included the use of a spectrometer to determine iron content, and a 3D printer to create the sand molds for casting. This method allowed for the lead time of the casting to be reduced significantly versus the traditional molding method. Removal of the multiple layers of paint revealed decorative elements not seen for decades, including dogwood flowers, flying griffins, and acanthus leaves of varying sizes. A closer look showed several of the acanthus leaves had been sheared off after decades of exposure. Intact leaves were removed, scanned, and recasted using the same 3D printing for the mold. The columns were repainted and reinstalled at the courthouse in January of 2019, along with wire cages on the underside of the porch to deter birds. Missouri Preservation commends the innovative restoration of the Lincoln County Courthouse columns and the dedicated individuals who ensured these significant artifacts of Lincoln County's history will remain for future generations.
Thank you to the Missouri Alliance for Historic Preservation, I never say it correctly, for this award. And I'd like to thank Inform Architecture for the help that they did with us. We could not have accomplished it without us. Also for the nomination for the project. Martin Construction from Eole, Missouri, Alpha Foundry from Wright City, Missouri, and that's it. Alpha? Yeah, I think that's it, the 3 main ones.
Okay.
The project was so much fun. There were a lot of headaches, weren't there?
Just a few.
But it was so neat to see the columns come apart and come down and be able to put them back together the way that they originally were. I was fortunate enough that we found the foundry in Wright City. I got to go over and actually watch them pour the parts, the replacement parts. That was so neat. The unique thing about this project is the fact that we used modern day technology to create 100-year-old parts, and that was just simply amazing to watch happen and be a part of. So I'd like to thank everyone for all of their contributions to the project.
When the trustees of the First Presbyterian Church of St. Genevieve purchased this early hall and parlor house next door to their church in 2006, they knew it was a historic building that contributed to the St. Genevieve National Historic Landmark District and that it had suffered the biblical 3, fire, flood, and pestilence. In 1982, the building was severely damaged by fire, and while the previous owner stabilized it, little work was done to the charred interior. The basement remained flooded for months during the 1993 flood, which firmly saturated the wood framing, allowing termites to move in and cause major damage to the sill plates, first floor joists, and even some of the first floor studs. The church knew they would need to raise money to make repairs, so they first made sure to maintain the building envelope and attack the long-standing termite problem. The church found a champion for the building among their members in Becky Millinger, who chaired the task force and whose ingenuity and perseverance got the job done.
Okay, my name is Becky Millinger, and I am the chairperson for the O'Neill Task Committee that was formed in 2010 to restore this building. I wanted to give you a little history about the building. We believe it was built somewhere around 1819. It's an Anglo-American style frame house. It was built for Antoine O'Neill, who was a silversmith who came down from Quebec to Detroit and Vincennes and then here, and he lived here until 1825. So this house was purchased by the First Presbyterian Church in 2006, and it was for the goal of expanding our space. We needed to have a bigger food pantry, we needed classrooms, and we needed a youth area. Initially had contractors come in who told us the house was very dangerous, so we backed off and almost immediately had a call from Royce Yater from the Jeffers Family Foundation saying they wanted to help us restore the building.
In 2013, they acquired a one-to-one matching grant from the Heartland Fund of the Jeffries Family Foundation in order to perform a historic structures report. The report provided a structural assessment of the house, chronicled physical changes over the years, identified the extent of the damage, and defined the scope of work and budget necessary to rehabilitate the building to its intended use.
Which was very beneficial for us to know what we needed to do and how much it was going to cost to restore the building. And then we actually wrote for a capital campaign grant from the Jeffers people, and we completed that successfully. We raised over $200,000 to receive $100 from them. In February of 2018, we began restoration with Carol Byington of Seals Corporation, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, and her carpenter, Keith Hinton.
By June 2017, the capital campaign raised the match, and the real work could finally begin. Damaged framing was replaced. The entry hall, staircase, and front room were restored, including an original stone fireplace. New HVAC, plumbing, and electrical systems were installed. The second floor was developed as a youth center, and the long-ago enclosed back porch was developed into a food pantry and support space. In addition to program uses, the house also now features a small exhibit in the entry hall dedicated to the work of silversmith Antoine O'Neill. Missouri Preservation applauds the First Presbyterian Church of St. Genevieve for their many years of commitment to the Antoine O'Neill house restoration.
We finished that project last year and had an open house, and we have been using the house for food pantry. We have meetings with some of the town people. We have classrooms here for our church purposes and a youth group area upstairs. So we're very appreciative for all that we've done. It seems 9 years doesn't seem quite as long now as it did from then to now. But so we did have a very successful campaign. And we just thank you for this award. It's an honor to be awarded this because we know what we did for the restoration. We're glad that that it's going to get out what we've done. So thank you very much.
When Henry Shaw opened his botanical garden to the St. Louis public in 1859, he constructed a 2,000-foot stone wall along the northern and eastern sides, averaging 12 feet in height. Over the years, portions of the wall began to fail due to poor repointing activities. The regrading of Tower Grove Avenue in the 1930s to flatten the roadway also exposed the eastern foundation to greater freeze-thaw cycles and heat. In 2014, the Missouri Botanical Garden began a 6-year, multi-phase restoration project on various portions of the wall, totaling 420 linear feet. Working with the National Park Service and using a Save America's Treasures grant, the full scope of the project was determined. Original stone and mortar were tested to determine original origin, composition, and how they were processed to build the wall that lasted nearly 165 years with only occasional maintenance. The various pointing mortars were also tested to determine how they contributed to the ultimate failure of large sections of the wall, 390 feet of which would require full dismantling and reconstruction. 9,600 square feet, equaling 49,000 stones, of the wall surface was delineated to document areas that had not failed in order to discern patterns and original construction methods. This method allowed the team to determine which rules to continue to follow in the restoration process and which steps to change in order to avoid future failure. All of the masons on the project were trained in methods of mid-19th century stonemasonry, required to complete 40 hours of job-specific training which included testing, and also had to audition on a mock-up before they would be certified to work on the wall. The deconstruction of damaged portions happened very carefully in order to avoid collapse. Masons were required to categorize stones by size and shape upon removal. The stones were stored on site and no stone was reinstalled further than 5 feet from its original location. Exposed foundation stones along Tower Grove Avenue were excavated and processed for use in the reconstruction, while new footings and foundations were designed to support the wall below grade, including the use of contemporary concrete and steel to ensure the wall's long-term stability. The careful attention to detail and specific training, combined with the study of the original builders' methods, produced an authentic process that yielded a near seamless integration of repaired and reconstructed portions of the existing wall. Missouri Preservation congratulates the Missouri Botanical Garden on this detailed rehabilitation of an important St. Louis historic resource.
Good afternoon and welcome to Missouri Botanical Garden. It's a beautiful afternoon here in November. We're standing out on Tower Grove Avenue, and behind me is a historic stone wall. It was built by Henry Shaw back in the 1850s. The wall survived the test of time from street levelings when the waviness of the street was here and the sidewalks were cut down and back up, and trees were planted adjacent to the wall. But finally the wall succumbed to all sorts of damages from tree roots and also from old age and improper tuck pointing. We were fortunate enough to get a grant from the National Park Service through Save America's Treasures, which funded 50% match for the project. The firm of Insight Consulting Architects was hired to oversee the work, and then we hired a local contractor to do all of the tuck pointing. The wall was actually totally removed, a new foundation put in place, concrete foundation, and the wall rebuilt. Extensive work was done into the training of the craftsmen to make sure that the workmanship and the materials used in the project were historic in nature and replicate what was originally there.
From the first settlements at the town of Kansas, to the small communities such as Steptoe, Hell's Half Acre, and Belvedere, to the rich culture of the 18th and Vine area, there are sites across Kansas City filled with African American history and heritage. The creation of the African American Heritage Trail developed over the course of a few years as numerous significant sites were lost to development and demolition. The concept of the Heritage Trail was proposed to raise awareness for these sites. In 2018, the city's Preservation Office received a Historic Preservation Fund grant from the Missouri State Historic Preservation Office to build an online heritage trail and produce a printed brochure. The community was given opportunities to submit feedback, and it was determined that this would be far more than just a list of sites and short walks, but the creation of an entity representing innumerable voices and histories from the community. With public opinion in mind, city planning staff reassessed the project and focused on the things deemed most important, such as documenting sites that are difficult to interpret, including those related to enslavement and lynching, along with sites related to those African Americans with significant contributions to Kansas City's history and culture. The city created the digital framework for the online heritage trail while partnering with existing groups, such as the Community Remembrance Project and the Stopping Stones Project, who could document and interpret sites. While the initial project, www.aahtKC.org, has been successfully launched, the platform remains open for community members to continually recommend sites to add to the trail. The project will continue with partners focused on future initiatives, such as establishing an education committee to develop lesson plans. The city is partnering with regional groups to prepare for broader context, develop physical markers and marked trails, and design kiosks to interpret and promote the trail. We commend the many individuals involved in bringing the African American Heritage Trail to fruition, and the continuing efforts behind preserving the African American experience in Kansas City and the surrounding area.
Thank you for this McReynolds Award for the African American Heritage Trail. Really, this was a community project. Even though city planning, we
helped with the grant. Really, it was the community that drove this, and a lot of our city staff helped kind of with the implementation. But the Black Archives, the UMKC, various institutions within UMKC, Bruce Watkins Center, and many other places that really contributed to make this a successful project. And the ongoing work of expanding the trail is really important in Kansas City. So
thank you for this 2020 McReynolds Award for the African American Heritage Trail. It's important that we save and preserve these pieces of history that go into making Black America, go into making African American, and go into making America.
Thank you for honoring us with the 2020 McReynolds Award. This project was so special to all of us because we really were able to work bringing individual talents and treasures and histories and pulling them together and putting together an environment that we could collaborate and share and keep growing history and excitement about all of the African American experiences here in Kansas City, Missouri.
We're very excited to receive this McReynolds Award for the African American Heritage Trail. I was very proud to be a part of the project, and I've worked in Black cultural institutions for the past 20 years, and I've oftentimes heard people talk about the fact that they didn't know about these very important aspects of our shared history. And so I think that it is important work, especially in the current cultural climate, to understand African American history and the context that has kind of created where we are today, so that we can look at what happened in the past and figure out how to make the present and the future better. And I think the African American Heritage Trail is an incredible resource toward that end. So thank you very much.
So thank you very much for this award.
I am so honored to be a part of this project. Thank you.
So we thank you very much, and we look forward to people exploring the trail.
The Lost St. Louis Riverfront 1930 to 1943 is a pictorial record of the numerous 19th century buildings along the St. Louis Riverfront that were demolished between 1930 and 1943 to make way for the Jefferson National Expansion Memorial, now known as Gateway Arch National Park. Black and white photographs document the area from waterfront up to the east side of 3rd Street, most listed with names and addresses of the occupants at the time. While the Gateway Arch has now become the most iconic representation of St. Louis City, this book highlights the important architecture that once flourished in its place.
Good morning and welcome. My name is John Gunther, and I'm here to introduce Tom Grady, the author and honoree of the Osmond Overby Award this year. Tom, congratulations on your well-deserved award and recognition. It has been a true privilege and honor to have written the introduction to your book. Thank you. In writing this book, assembling the images and information on these remarkable buildings which once stood on the St. Louis riverfront, Tom has left this and future generations a magnificent book of what was, is no longer, but will certainly not be forgotten. Tom, thank you.
I want to thank the Alliance for Missouri Preservation for this very impressive award, and I'm very humbled by it. The book that I've authored is the product of many people, and I want to just briefly thank them, not to go on and on here, but I do think that John Hoover at the Mercantile Library and Julie Dunn Morton, his first assistant, deserve some credit, along with Charles Brown, the research librarian at the St. Louis Mercantile Library, the oldest cultural institution in the state of Missouri. And they're located at the University of Missouri. They are the publishers of this book. In addition to that, the book could not have been done without the cooperation of the Park Service, because the Park Service actually houses the entire archive of destroyed buildings. And they made that archive available to me, and Bob Moore, the chief historian at the Arch, and his assistant, who is the archivist there, that's Jennifer Clark. Jennifer went to great trouble to identify not only the photographs, but the files connected with the photographs, which identified so much information that is contained in the book. It was my pleasure to do the book, and I thank John Gunther, who was who is a tremendous help and a historian and a fellow of the American Institute of Architects, for doing the introduction of the book, which is actually a master's thesis in architecture. So thank you very much, Rachel and Bill, for this kind award. And I'm glad that it has sold out, and the book is now in its second printing.
Tim Conley has dedicated over 50 years to the field of historic preservation and has personally undertaken the restoration of 5 historic properties in Missouri. At only 21, Mr. Conley purchased his first historic home, the Blair Hughes McAvoy Mansion in the Lafayette Square neighborhood of St. Louis. He spent more than 10 years restoring this property and in 1974 published Lafayette Square, an Urban Renaissance, about the restoration of his neighborhood. He spent 9 years in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area restoring 2 homes, but returned to Missouri in 1994 to purchase and restore the St. Genevieve Academy, built in 1808. In 2003, he moved north to another river city, Louisiana, Missouri. There, he purchased and restored the Edward G. McQueen House, considered one of the largest and most intact Greek Revival houses in Louisiana. While serving on the local Historic Preservation Commission in Louisiana, he helped initiate the Great Mansion Tour. Only a few years later, he moved back to St. Genevieve and purchased the 1794 Jean-Baptiste Valley House. The extended vacancy of this French colonial vertical log house resulted in the substantial deterioration of the roof, which caused significant damage to the interior. Mr. Conley renovated the home and restored the 200-year-old formal garden. In 2013, he sold this property to the National Society of the Colonial Dames of America in the state of Missouri, and as of 2020, it is now owned by the National Park Service as a part of the newly established St. Genevieve National Historical Park. His next St. Genevieve project was the Antoine Aubuchon House, constructed in 1812, and he continues to reside in this vertical log home. Along with preserving historic structures, Mr. Conley has supported a variety of local and statewide preservation efforts in Missouri. From 1999 to 2006, he served on the St. Genevieve Historic Landmarks Commission and served as its chair from 2001 to 2006. He also served on the Missouri Advisory Council on Historic Preservation from 2002 to 2006 and chaired it from 2003 to 2006. Mr. Conley also served on the board of directors here at Missouri Preservation. Thank you, Mr. Conley, for your dedication to the field of historic preservation in Missouri for these many years. This award is much deserved.
Well, it's a great opportunity today to present this award to Tim Conley for the things that he's done in our state to preserve the history of this state and some of the projects he's worked on in his lifetime. It is a great honor to be able to give him the Elizabeth and George Rozier Award, a very distinguished award that he'll be receiving today. So it's an honor for me as the governor of the state of Missouri to present this award to Tim. Tim?
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tim, would you like to say a few words?
I'm flattered to be considered for this award. And I was on the board of preservation, Missouri Preservation, and I never dreamed that I would be getting it. But I want to thank the governor and Bill Hart for thanking me. Yeah.
All right, well, congratulations on that and everything. Appreciate it very much. And thank you for what you do for all of us here in the state of Missouri.
Hi, I'm Rachel Consoloy, Missouri Preservation Board member and chair of the Honor Awards Committee. While it's disappointing that we can't experience the grandeur of the Capitol Rotunda this year, I'm so glad you all could join us this evening to recognize the wonderful preservation work that's been going on across the state. I would like to thank the award winners for their important contributions to preserving, documenting, and advocating for historic resources throughout Missouri. I would like to thank our sponsors, Mary Pillsbury Wainwright and Mary Pillsbury Companies, Insight Consulting Architects LLC, Iron Star Incorporated, Marks Nelson CPAs and Business Advisors, Rosen Preservation, Blackline Design and Construction, Wallenberg Building Conservation, and Karen Bodie Baxter Preservation Specialist for their generous support, without which this event would not be possible. I would also like to thank Riley Price and Bill Hart for all the hard work they put into making tonight happen. Their contributions have been invaluable. Lastly, I would like to thank all of you for being here tonight, all the members and non-members. For those of you who have not yet done so, we hope that you will consider becoming members as we work together to preserve Missouri's historic resources. Thank you.